So today we will build a patch from scratch concentrating on Bandit from Befaco. This will be more or less improvised, but I do have a few ideas, as you can see, that I would like to try. I have a PDF of tips and tricks with modules in eurorack that I keep on updating, so I added the ideas from this video as well. If you're interested, it's available on my Patreon together with more exclusive content. So the first thing I thought about trying is using different envelopes for the different bands. Basically, Bandit is a 4-band sort of EQ with lots of options, send, return, modulation, and so on. Right, so I thought we can start with a nice drone, but with different rhythms for each of the bands. So if, for example, let's take, for example, the Pony VCO. Right, I will just send this to the all input, so now it goes to all different bands. Let's take them down. Right, and if I send the mix output to the mixer, and by the way, I have here, as always, the clock module from Impromptu Clock. I have here the mixer from MindMeld, and a send reverb, of course, just so I don't have to add a reverb for each voice, right? We have a send reverb plateau. So now, for example, this is, for example, the high mid. Right, and then if I add some wave shaping here, right, we have the high, low mid, and then low, right, and again we have a CV input for each of them, so I can use, for example, if I take this, let's say, let's make this a nice bass drum, maybe with a triangle. Right, we can sequence each of the bands separately. So if, for example, you know what, let's go with Max Slicer. I will sync it just with the clock, right? Maybe I multiply it by 4 clock. Let's go with the BPM of, let's say 107. 106? No, 107. Right, and also the reset here. Right, so now this will be synced to the clock. And now let's have one rhythm. So what I can do is I can use, for example, an envelope. Shall we use also the envelope from Befaco? Why not? Or you know what we can do? We can use also Percol, which has 4 envelopes, right? Which is already exactly what we need because we have 4 bands, right? So I'm going to trigger the first one. I'm going to trigger it with a CV output because I don't want all the triggers. Right, and then the envelope output, let's send this to the low, for example. Right, and instead of 8 steps, let's have these 7 steps. So I can take the gate output, and instead of resetting this here, I will take the gate output. Right, and reset it on step number 7. Right, so now we have this. Right, so now we have this rhythm here, and now for Max Slicer we have also the expanders, which will add more triggers. Right, so I can have, for example, yeah, let's have something like this maybe, or you know what, let's have different steps. Let's have something like this, but then I will use a different, let's have the second band here. Right, but now I will use maybe a different trigger sequencer because I would like to have a different length. Right, so for example, in this case, I can clock it with the same clock. Instead of 7 steps, let's go with 10 steps, let's say. Right, and this will trigger yet another envelope for the high mid. Right, and then maybe another sequence, maybe this one will have, let's say, 5 steps with just the first step on, and again with also reset, I will just reset everything. Right, and this will trigger the last envelope that we have here. Right, so from a simple drone, we got now something a bit more interesting. We can make this even more interesting by sending this through some chorus. Right, this is the chorus from Flag, with more drive, maybe less delay time. Right, and we can add maybe here some modulation for the shaping. I don't know if we should stay, maybe we should go with a square with some modulation, and then maybe here at the end we can add a nice filter just to add another layer of timbre control here. Right, so I'm going with the square wave, and I will use just the LFO for now from Bogue Audio as an LFO, just to modulate here the timbre, which is in this case pulse width control. Right. It loses the... I don't know why to lose the bass so much. Right, so now we have them. Another thing I can do here with the envelopes, since we have 4 envelopes, I can also mix them. I mean, we have the mix here and we have volume here, but I would like the volume for the Bandit to stay the same. So I'm just going to use this is not the envelopes, 1, 2, 3, 4, mix them separately and then have different levels for them to modulate the filter with the same envelopes, but again with a different mix, right? So for example, the first one, right? Right, so we have again the same rhythm also for the bass, but maybe go with a different filter, maybe the K35. Right, and then of course what we need is a delay. I'm going to have the delay here in parallel, you know what? Because I want to add reverb, send reverb just for the delay. So I'm going to send a copy of it, mix all the way up. If I right click the outputs, I can send this directly to the mixer, by the way. I'm going but to have to sync this, or I would like to sync this. Right, maybe take the level a bit down, call this, what shall I call this, pony, and this pony delay. And add send reverb, right, just for the delay signal. I can take the low frequencies a bit out, add more modulation depth maybe, so it's a bit less stable. Right, so this is already something I wanted to try, is to have different envelopes, different rhythms on the different bands. Right, you take a signal, you split it to the different bands, low, low, mid, and high, and then control the different bands separately, right? So we already have this, maybe I will take this up here, so we have some room for other voices. Another thing I want to do is use Bandit to mix different sounds, right? We have here individual inputs, right? We can send a voice just to the low, mid, and so on and so forth, and use this as a sort of a spectral mixer, if you will. Right, so let's see what we can do. Maybe, let's see what else we have here from Befaco. We have also the octaves VCO, for example. This can be one. Maybe we'll have just 2 different voices. So let's have the octaves VCO, and I will use the VCO unit from Venom. Right, so let's see. Let's take I will take the main output here, right, from the octaves VCO. This will go to the low and let's say to the high mid, and then the unit will go to the low mid and to the high. I will take all of them down for a second, and I will also, I think, sequence them separately with two different sequences, so we get something a bit more interesting. But let's listen to this for a second. Right? Octaves VCO. And maybe here on the unit we can have a triangle wave with a shaper. Right, and then we have low, mid, and high. And now I will also would like to sequence them separately. So if we look at the sequencer, let's go, the Max Slicer we used already. I can use two-step sequences actually. This can also be quite nice. One for the steps, for the octaves, one for the VCO unit. I will use the same clock multiplication and again the reset. Right, and let's have one with 15 steps and the other one with 12 steps, just to have a bit more variation. Again, reset everything. And what I will like to have actually, I will have both of them here because I would like to quantize things. So I will use the quant module, quant 4 module from Sequencel, which has 4 quantizers. Yeah, and then I will use both sequences, and then this will go once to the octaves VCO, and this will go once to the VCO unit. Let's listen for a second, just to the octaves VCO. Right? Maybe an octave up. And what I will do, I'm going to use the mod 7 from Sequencel, set this to unipolar. So now I have 7 unipolar LFOs. So I'm going first of all to change the pulse width modulation a bit, not so much. Right, I can also change here the overtones. Right, just to create an interesting sound. Right, and then we have here another sequence. So we have here, what was it, 12 steps? Right, so I'm mixing basically both of them, but on different bands. Right, and now what I can do, I can also use an LFO, for example, to bring, or LFOs, right, I have here 4 more LFOs, to bring them in and out. Right, and of course they can have also different traits, the LFOs. We have the two sequences and they will come in and out. I will use the same pulse width here, modulation also for the shape, just for fun. Right, and now let's have some stereo things going on. So I will use, for example, you know what, let's have a look again at Befaco and see what we can do here. For sure but I think there is no like I don't want to say normal filter, but like a usual filter that we can use. So I'm going to use 2 VCV VCFs. I'm going to send a copy, use them in parallel, right? Use them left and right, and then I will use another LLFO to modulate. The same. If I click now Control C on one and Control V on the other, they will be set exactly the same. So I'm going to set the same LFO to both filters, but one I will open to the right, one I will open to the left. And now we get panning with filtering, but maybe a bit more drive also. Maybe it has something like this. Right, so we have interesting panning now. Not just normal panning, but panning with filters. Let's call this mix. Right. Another thing we can do here, just to add a bit more variation, is I can use another step sequencer. I will just initialize it for a second. I will drive it with, let's say, yes, multiplied by 1, the original clock. I will set it, let's say, to 5 steps. Set just step number 1 a bit up, and this I can use to offset the sequence just to get different notes every now and then. And we have here an offset input here on the quantizer itself for both sequences. Right? Right, just something like this. Maybe we need a bit more of the higher frequencies here. And maybe open this also a bit more. Right, so this is another thing I want to try, basically mixing voices, mixing different sequences with Bandit on different bands. Of course, we can also explore audio rate modulation. So modulating the levels at audio rates, basically. So let's have a look at this. I will use another Bandit. Maybe in this case we can create a nice bass drone. So let's use again another of the octaves VCO. And I will use another unit VCO or VCO unit, sorry. And I will mix them before Bandit. You know what, we can add even another VCO just for fun. Something, maybe the wavetable or something with a bit different. You know what, maybe just noise actually. Of course noise, with noise plethora. Right, so now this is what we will do. We'll take the octaves VCO, the VCO unit. I will already set this to, let's say, a saw wave. And let's add the first output here from noise plethora. We will see what this will give us, which noise. This will go again to the all input, right? I will just take them a bit down here. Let's see if we can even create a chord if we use different, I will solo this for a second, if I use different intervals for the modulation. Do I have the mix output? Yeah. Right, I'm going to set this, for example, 2 octaves down. I'm going to add here again the 7, the mod 7, again unipolar. And I just have this just for movement. Right? Also some noise also here just for movement. Right, and maybe have this as a bandpass filter with some modulation here. Right, and now let's try. I like this. Let's try now to have audio rate modulation. So I'm just going to use 4 LVCOs. In this case, LVCO is just oscillators. And actually, you know what? Maybe I will prefer to use actually, you know what, the quad LFO from Surge XT, because I would prefer to use unipolar signals because of the modulation here on Bandit. So what I can do, I can change each of them to a sine wave, right? And then each of them also to unipolar. Right, so it will work better with the modulation, and then by ear maybe I can set a chord. I don't know if it will work. It's the first time I'm trying this. Let's have this for the bass. right? This will be 1. I don't think it will work with the chord, but we can still have interesting right, just like interesting audio rate modulation here. Right, listen to this. Let's try and find different algorithm here for the noise that's not so squeaky. This is a nice sound, you have to admit. I don't have here pulse width modulation, this has to be. Just detune the oscillators a bit from one another. Now this needs also some chorus, I believe, and a nice filter, and maybe also some distortion before the filter. And actually before this, you know what we can do? Maybe instead, no, you know what, maybe with the chorus, but before the chorus, let's have a spring reverb here from Befaco. Again, just reverb before distortion is, it's my hobby, so that's how it will have to be. Again, also here, if I right click, I can just connect this to the VCF, and then to the filter. Let's add some reverb, and then, oh my god, some chorus, not on the lows. Oh yeah. Distortion. Listen to this sound. Very nice. Let's call this drone. It will be our bass drone for now. In this case, I'm going to use walk, which is smooth random modulation here, just to modulate the filter a bit. Just to have some nice movement here. Right, maybe this is here, the mix is a bit too high. Right, now another thing, maybe this again we can put up here. We also have send and return. So we can use send and return in Bandit directly, or we can also process externally the different bands in parallel, right? So if we look at Bandit, right, maybe we can add now a main mixer with slips and maybe another Pony VCO. Let's see if I can find the Pony VCO when I enter Pony. Yeah. Right, slips basically will create unique, very dynamic, very full of movement sequences. Right, so I can just generate a sequence, maybe we'll go with 7 steps, right? Generate a sequence, generate a modulation sequence. Actually, the modulation sequence we can set always to random by changing the end of cycle to the input here of the generation, right? So the modulation will also always be random. We have a sequencer, we have here also a built-in VCA, but I don't think I would like to gate this. In this case, I would just like the sequence to continue all together. Let's just listen to this as it is. Right, and maybe add modulation to the timbre. Right, no need for the lows maybe. Right, but for example, right, for the highs, we have here send and return, so I can use, for example, a delay, right? This will be Prince of Perception, I will sync it. Right, and I can send the highs to Prince of Perception and then go back. We have here the return input. Right, and now we are, and I can also even reverse it maybe, so it will be different than the other ones. Right, so now just the highs are going through, right, Prince of Perception. Maybe an octave down. And the modulation here is not smooth, so I will use the slew limiter, the new slew limiter from Befaco. Timbre, this should be green for modulation. Right, just so we don't get those clicks. And now on slips, first of all, we can add some probability so the notes will not change all the time. And we can add slips so that it will always add like random notes according to the probability. I prefer maybe a triangle wave. Right, and now, for example, to this band here, I can send it to a separate reverb, and after the reverb, again, I'm going to use distortion. And you know what, maybe the clock is too quick here. Maybe I will use a multiplied by 2 clock instead of 4. Just to have something a bit less, right, a bit less annoying. But now I can just take the high mid here, send this to the reverb, and it will go out of the mix, right? But then instead of coming back to the return, I just take the reverb, send it to a distortion, and then have this in parallel on a different channel. Right? If I solo this for a second, right? Right, I can do this in parallel here. Maybe shorter size. Right, reverb through distortion, that's what it's all about. Right, but maybe, you know what, maybe not this band, maybe this band here. Yeah, and then I can even add here more send reverb, just for fun, because reverb is life. Right, and solo this, bring back what we used here with the send. Right, and another thing here maybe we can do, we have the rotary speaker from Surge XT. I can use the third band here, the high mid, send it there, and then just have this. Just a second, have this a bit in the stereo field. Right, and you know what, maybe with a phaser even, just to have like a few different layers here to this very simple sequence. Right, and you know what, even after this, why not? Maybe a shorter delay, not synced, but something a bit shorter. More modulation. Right? And again, 7 will be also with reverb, maybe the levels a bit down. Right, and I'm sure there is a lot more to explore, But I believe this is all what I wanted to try today. Different envelopes, different voices, audio rate modulation, send return, external processing. What you can do is you can experiment with feedback. This should also be quite interesting. And just try to add it to the voices that you're using, the sequences. This sequence is a bit annoying. Let me just... something like this. Yeah. Right, just use it on different voices that you have. See where it takes you with the send return and just EQing things. But that was it for today. Thank you again so much for watching. Cheers.